Now, with their Russia collusion fantasies going up in flames, Democrats are trying to find new meaning in their political lives. And to satisfy their left-wing core, well, they're dabbling with socialism and racializing almost every issue out there imaginable. But that's obviously not enough to win in 2020, because what may stoke their radical core repels the white working-class voters who turned out by the millions for Donald Trump in 2016. So I think Democrats are in something of a conundrum here, because for all their bluster about Trump's vulnerability, they're the ones with a big problem. Unless you think steel workers and, let's say, the Rust Belt are clamoring for this message.
We have a president today who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a homophobe, who is a xenophobe, and who is a religious bigot. This country continues to be plagued by institutional racism and racial inequality.
Now, are coal miners' families in West Virginia excited about this?
Hundreds of years of slavery and institutional racism have caused mass inequity and harm to black people and has held black communities back for generations from achieving their full potential.
All right, what about union workers in Michigan? Is this the approach they've been waiting for?
Our planet is in peril, and we need to be bold. And there's a lot of people now that are blowing back on the Green New Deal. They're like, oh, it's impractical. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's all of this. If we used to govern our dreams that way, we would have never gone to the moon.
All right, well, when their new oracle is part social media whiz and part socialist trendsetter, well, Democrats risk an exodus of working-class voters.
The idea that you can be poor and benefit from the color of your skin does not compute for a lot of people. It's very painful to admit that you had advantages.
Well, in 2016, white voters constituted more than 74% of all voters, according to Pew Research. And remember, Obama did very well with this voting bloc in both 2008 and 2012. Yet some Democrats seem to be actually working overtime to scare off as many white male voters as possible.
I'll be much more thoughtful going forward in the way that I talk about our marriage, and also the way in which I acknowledge the truth of the criticism that I have enjoyed white privilege. Absolutely. Undeniable. I have been arrested twice in my life. Those mistakes didn't end up defining me or narrowing my options in life. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm a white man.
Unbelievable. Now, even old Joe Biden is trying to play racial catch-up. He recently apologized to Anita Hill for the whiteness of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
There were a bunch of white guys. She faced a committee that didn't fully understand what the hell it was all about. To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved.
Well, the liberal media also keeps race front and center. They make no secret of their belief that being white is a negative when running for office.
Is it time to have somebody of color and a woman and somebody younger or somebody more establishment?
Well, I think that the Democrats across the country are going to help decide that.
But as a white guy, are you trying to calculate whether or not this is the right time for you?
They're obsessed. Well, the race and diversity focus undoubtedly comes off to many Americans as deeply unfair and itself kind of racist. Now, these voters proudly call themselves bitter clingers. Remember that after the snarky 2008 Obama comment about how fearful Americans were clinging to their guns and religion? Well, Trump showed up in 2016 and appealed directly to these forgotten Americans.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now.
So will the deplorables feel more comfortable with the Democrats' new self-appointed spokesman for moral and cultural issues?
If me being gay was a choice, It was a choice that was made far, far above my pay grade. And that's the thing I wish the Mike Pences of the world would understand. That if you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my creator.
If there's a poll that shows that this focus is on the top of any list of voters' concerns, well, let alone the concerns of working class, Catholic, and evangelical voters, I must have missed that survey. At least one Democrat who knows a little bit about winning national elections is warning that his party is in danger with all these intra-party litmus tests.
We start sometimes creating what's called a circular firing squad, where you start shooting at your allies because one of them is straying from purity on the issues. And when that happens, typically the overall effort and movement weakens.
I was clearly talking about like reparations, Green New Deal, that kind of stuff there. But the Democrat circular firing squad he was referencing has caused even candidates who have the best chance appealing to working class whites, like Joe Biden, to move far left. And let's face it, there's zero appetite now at this point for a moderate like Howard Schultz. That's not happening. And of course, the elephant in the room in this entire debate about how the Democrats can attract these working class voters is that the word economy, right, is painted on the side of the big fat elephant in the room. And the economy, according to Pew's latest survey, is still the #1 issue for Americans nationwide. In a new Gallup poll, Trump scores 93% approval with Republican voters on his handling of the economy. So how on earth are Democrats going to beat the strongest economy in the G7 with record low unemployment, almost 500,000 new manufacturing jobs created? What's their argument for beating that? In the last 12 months, wages have risen by 3.4%. And headlines like this were just not seen during 8 years of Obama. Blue-collar voters finally getting a raise. Workers are making more money. So Democrats, what are they going to say? Well, they have the race, they have socialism, and they have one other talking point left in their manual.
What about the economy for the people who don't have the choices or don't have the education that I have?
Well, the unemployment is way down. I mean, across sectors, across the country.
Help me out here.
So what did the Attorney General do?
Unemployment is not the only relevant statistic, and there needs to be a debate, an informed debate about the state of the economy that needs to look at income inequality.
At a time of historic income inequality, should be asked to pay a greater share.
We're talking about generational poverty, generational disposition.
We have a nation of massive inequality.
Markets without rules is about the rich take it all. It's about the powerful get all of it.
Okay, so it's income inequality. Long-winded way of saying that. But this argument is a loser. Wages for most Americans are going up now, not because of government mandates, but because of Trump's policies. What are they? Lower taxes, less regulation, pressure on China trade cheating, and a tighter labor market for all working people. So the Democrats' answer is higher taxes, more regulations, more low-wage laborers flooding into America. That's exactly the opposite of what most working-class voters want. And for those liberals who put all their hopes in being saved by changing demography, well, here's a news flash. This is the percentage of white non-college graduate voters in a handful of key states. In Iowa, they make up 62% of the population. In Michigan, 54% of the population. Ohio, 55%. Pennsylvania, 51%. And Wisconsin, 58%. Trump does really well with that group, obviously. Now, even a progressive writer for The Atlantic noted the folly of the demography will save us thinking, saying, this is wishful thinking. First, the U.S. won't be majority-minority until about 2045. Moreover, even in 2040, 37 states will remain majority white. Today's radicalized Democrat Party has moved further away from the voters they need to win in 2020. They still have no clue. It's unbelievable, really, how to speak to the working class white voters, let alone how to get their votes. They look down their elitist noses at all working people of all backgrounds. And their values, come on, they pretty much look down their noses at everything about the working class people. And no slick advertising slogans or campaigns or candidates who try to out-Christian the Trump-Pence ticket will overcome the deep distrust that many working-class Americans rightly feel toward this 2020 Democrat field. And that's the angle.